Okay, I am live and on camera. Live and on camera now. Let's see if I can actually log into chat today. If not, not a problem. Okay, I am live and on camera. Okay, sure. Live that works too. And on camera now. Let me try it here. Discord has been notified today. Now, I don't know how well the audio is working, so people need to tell me if anything weird is happening. Okay, I am live. Yeah, I think everyone should be able to hear me. Sure. My concern is the music, though. I'm not sure if it's too loud or not loud enough. Let me try it here. And I'm going to shut down this one. Okay, there we go. Let's make sure I'm using different streaming software today. That's why it's taking a little extra time. Okay, let me pop out the chat here. Okay, and I'm gonna bring up Discord here. So I'm using Streamlabs. Not the service, just their desktop app. So it's a little different from what I'm used to. Last time I used Meld. Okay, so let's see, is anyone, it's a little bit more confusing this time to see if, just hello everyone. I just wanted to have a system where everything was on Windows. That's why I switched things around a little bit. So what's the plan for today? Well, periodically I have mentioned that I worked on Microsoft, all the time I mentioned I worked at Microsoft. And once or twice I have brought up that probably people don't know how many different applications that Microsoft was actually, involved in creating. I'm going to turn that down a little bit more, hopefully. That were related to, drawing, right? Or, in that same space. I can think of just a few offhand. Oh, it looks like there's some news. We'll cover some news as well. We've got a new tablet that was just announced. XP Pen hinted at it. Yeah, it's a Microsoft front page. Was one. There was one called Image Composer, which ships with front page. I didn't work on that one. And then there was one called Expression. And of course there's Paint. I think there was an animation app or two. So roughly in the same space. But the one I worked on was called, there was, of course, Paint 3D. But the one I worked on was called Microsoft PhotoDraw, specifically version 2. And I wanted to show you a little bit of what it was like. First of all, again, many of you do not realize Microsoft made an app like this. So I wanted to give people a chance. Okay, let me rearrange my windows a little bit. There we go. Now I can see the chat. Not that I'm seeing a whole bunch of people or anything, but this actually helps me. Let's try this again. Chat. There we go. And then where's my Discord? There we go. We're all good. Okay, so we're going to show it. I spent today installing a virtual machine with Windows XP SP3 and then finding my old PhotoDraw disk, because I actually have a box of the original retail packaging. And I wanted to show it, demo it, talk about it, because I think it's worth talking about. Let's see we're going to do a little bit of archaeology. We're going to see how well it lasted, and were the things that were important to PhotoDraw, are they still relevant today? I think we're going to see in some cases they are, some cases they're not. I'll give you a little bit of insider perspective on PhotoDraw, and at least from what I experienced about it. And so you'll learn a little bit of history as well. Okay, before we get there though, there is news. There is absolutely some news. So let me get there. Let me minimize a window here and let me show you. There was a new tablet. Oh, let's see. It's from XP Pen. They hinted at it. Brad Cobo mentioned it should be announced today, but he wasn't allowed to talk about it quite yet. So let's go to xppen.com and I'm going to drag it over here. So it is the Artist Pro 27 Gen 2. It says, I hate this thing scrolled away. Color Master touchscreen drawing display. So it has touch, obviously. 4K, great, and 120 hertz. It says mega display. Again, I'm not sure why, but it's a 27 inches, 10 billion colors, so it's 10-bit color. X-Touch solution. Don't know what that exactly means, X-Touch. Yeah, this is the new one. Let's click on this, see if we can get some details here. So they're focusing on color, display rate, refresh rate, and on touch. Hi, Cami Luna. Hi, Cami Luna. Thanks for joining me. And let's just accept some cookies here. I mean, it looks nice. Nothing too out of the ordinary. It comes with 2 pens. It looks like the size of a school blackboard, Cami Luna says. Interesting. 27 inches is huge. I'm not going to get this tablet, first of all, but I have a Cintiq Pro 27. Too much for me. Too much. X-Touch. The new X-Touch solution combined with flagship dual styli. Well, I guess that is the plural in Latin or something, but I just think people should say styluses or pens. Oh, looks like the little bit of the copy, the type, the words have not been edited correctly. Let your creativity soar on this high quality drawing display. Okay, ultra high color gamma. I wish this wouldn't scroll. I hate when they do that. My resolution on the screen is a little low because I need to increase it to show PhotoDraw. So this is 1 billion colors. I'm not sure this is a fair picture. I like how they have the 2 pens on top. That's kind of nice. X-Touch, I just think means touch. S-Glass, they say clearer image. Okay, that's good. Anything else they focus on here? Well, I really like their Artist Pro 22 Gen 2. So hopefully this will be a good one. And so I'm looking forward to Brad and I hope T.O. and a few others taking a look at this. Drawing tablets are starting to get good. By the way, I love that they have 2 pens. I think that's very important. Let's see if the Discord has any comments on this. Someone asked, no specification what the screen, it's VA or IPS. I think it would have to be IPS, right? Hi, Charlie Martian. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into PhotoDraw and talk about it. I am so excited. I am really just so excited. And I'll give you a little context before we start talking about the app. Number one, I joined Microsoft in 1996 and I worked on a team called Microsoft Exchange. That's an email server, okay? So back then, that's the kind of thing a company did. You installed one or many email servers so you could send and receive email. It was only much later than most companies switched to having their email hosted by other companies like Microsoft. So this was an on-premise solution. And probably the reason I was interesting as a new hire for this team was I was in Vanderbilt University, and the web and web stuff was pretty new. So I was fooling around a lot with HTML and, just web stuff. And the Exchange Server team was not doing web stuff, was not using internet standards. So I think that was what made me somewhat of an attractive candidate for them. So I joined the Exchange team. But really, to be honest, I always wanted to work on something in Microsoft that had to relate to computer graphics. That's really what I always wanted to do, because I'm really into that topic. Oops, there's a little lines, not lines. So I was just responding to a comment on Discord. Camila says, I like the 2 pens as well. I think if the display is OLED, the page would have mentioned it. Yeah, and I think there's a question, again, in the Discord saying, is it VA panel or IPS? I would say it has to be IPS, but Jessica's telling me XP Pen had a few QLED VAs in the past. Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to check up on that. Okay, I think Uria says it is specified as ADS IPS. I've never heard of ADS IPS. I don't know what the ADS stands for. So let me just put a question mark on that one to the Discord crew. Anyway, at that time, a colleague mentioned, so in Microsoft, there's kind of like a job board internally. And you can't just switch jobs like that. You have to basically interview for the new job, even though you're already in the company, which makes sense. So they said, hey, Seven, there is this new app. I looked at it, the ad, or the job listing. I said, I got to be there. So I immediately went there, and I had no experience, I had no experience in computer graphics, except that I drew and used tablets. Had never done any UI before, and this was a team in Microsoft Office at the time, and they were really into user experience, okay? Really took it seriously. Everyone did. I had no background, and I did the interview, and the hiring manager, who ended up being my manager when I joined the team, said, I was frustrated at him one day. He said, I was the one who pushed for you to get on the team. Apparently, I wasn't, they were going to not hire me because I had no experience in computer graphics, in just graphics and UI, actually. They had no experience in UI. And so I can't remember exactly what he said, but he just really loved my enthusiasm. And I said, yeah, I want to make this work. So I joined the team, and that was I would really say when I started learning more about how sort of, UI worked. You'll actually see the first piece of UI design. I'll even critique it for you. So that's how I got in. Now here's the catch, or a little more context. PhotoDraw had existed for it had just released, okay? It had just released. This is 1998, if I got the dates correctly. PhotoDraw, the full name of the app is Microsoft PhotoDraw 2000. Back then, everyone liked putting 2000 in the titles of their software. So they had just released, and they were looking to do V2 within a year, which is really extraordinarily rare that you ship a new version, a major version in 1 year. We did it in, I think, 11 months. So that was the job listing for that. Going on V2 is what I saw. So it had already shipped. And as my manager at the time, Mark, told me, in Microsoft, I guess this is still true, but I think you'll understand. This will resonate with you. You have an idea for what you want to build. You have a vision for it, and you want to build it. And it takes so much energy and effort and thinking just to get to the V1. You're really not happy with the V1 because you're not close to where you wanted to be. And the V1 reveals all sorts of little things you didn't do as well as you would have liked, or you didn't do at all. So V2 is the first big step toward the vision, because you're fixing all the big problems. And V3 is when you finally basically get to, what you're kind of happy with with the product. I'm not saying that's true for every product of Microsoft, but it does take this. So V1 was, I think, a year or something, not too long. It was a very short cycle for V1, if I understand. So I came in V2, the very beginning, the planning phase of V2. And what you're seeing now is the result of that planning phase. So within 1 year, V2 was shipped. Okay, so it's the version I've worked on is called Microsoft PhotoDraw 2000 V2. Okay, having said all that, let's try to show you this, okay? And I think I'm going to put my face on the right, so it'll give you the most, or maybe on the left, so you can see most of what's going on here. Let's bring up. Okay, so first of all, you are seeing, I'm going to put it on the left, it'll be a little bit easier for most of the UI. Okay, first, what you're seeing is Windows XP SP3. So I have an ISO and I installed it. It's not connected to the internet, so it's reasonably safe, I would think. But you remember what was this called? The Bliss wallpaper. And it's the VM is set to give this 1 GB of RAM. I think in this time, the computer I literally had in my Microsoft Office didn't have a gigabyte of RAM. I think it had on the order of 128, 256. I think by the time I left PhotoDraw, it was like 300 maybe. That's the world, not gigabytes, megabytes of RAM. Storage, I don't remember, honestly. I don't think we were in the gigabytes yet. I think we were in the 100, 200 megabytes in this time. Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit less, but that's around where we were at. So this is not taking up a lot of resources on my machine to run this. So, but you may see it sort of be a little slower in some cases than a real machine would be. So let's click on Start. And the first thing we're doing Windows XP. The first thing I realize is there's no search. Today, when you hit Windows key, you'll get you can search, but that wasn't around back then. Okay. Next thing you'll see all this, what they call, I'm not sure who called it, but it was often referred to as Fisher Price UI. All these kind of, these kind of shapes, which I think was wildly popular. So I can't search for PhotoDraw, but it's already in a recently used menu here. So Microsoft PhotoDraw V2. Now, here's a little bit of trivia. Notice it doesn't say Microsoft PhotoDraw 2000 V2. Because the actual name of the product is Microsoft PhotoDraw 2000 V2. And I was in charge, among the other things I did, I was in charge of the setup of PhotoDraw. And I said, hey, on a normal person's computer or on the start menu for Windows, our name is too big. Like it's too big. It looks, I can't remember what happened. Either it got cut off, like you couldn't see the V2, or it wrapped around and we didn't want it to wrap around. So it was hugely controversial, actually hugely controversial, that there is no 2000 here. As far as I know, we were the first Office app to be named like this, like literally have a V2 in the title, right? So it's very unusual. I think at the time Microsoft Office was doing like Office 2000, that kind of thing. But yeah, as far as I know, we're the only one with a literal version number in the title name in the start menu, because the full text wouldn't fit. So I'm going to click on it, and there we go. So I forgot what this is called. This is, it's just to get you going. What's it say? Create a new picture using blank picture, design template, download from digital camera, scan picture, open from web page, open an existing picture. Okay? And don't show this dialog again. These days, I think we would not do something quite like this. And there's some interesting things here you're noticing. Things like design template. What does that mean? And then download from digital camera and scan picture. And I was the program manager for these features as well for digital cameras and scanners. Back then, it was something more in someone's mind to just get it from a digital camera or a scanner, which is not as easy as today, by the way. And remember, the internet wasn't necessarily widely available for people here. So it wasn't like you can necessarily even email people this. So you'd have to connect your camera or something. And I don't think people scan these days either. But this was an office application. And so, they still live in the world of, documents that are printed and have to get scanned. Anyway, I'm just going to do one more comment here, design template. We'll take a look at it. But one of the themes that was in PhotoDraw, and I don't think it really wore well, was, you wouldn't need a designer. Because there was a, quote, designer in a box. Don't ask me if that, I didn't come up with that. I think that was even a V1 thing. You still scan stuff, Cami Luna? For work or for other reasons? For non-work reasons? But the reason I'm focusing on this designer in a box is there's always been this idea in Microsoft that, you're trying to do something creative and you don't need a designer. You don't need to hire anybody. We'll just give you some nice templates and, you don't need them. I don't think that necessarily worked out very well. The truth is everyone could detect that they had used a Microsoft template. And so no one wants to be using something that's, a template, okay? Where you are in some sense saying, you didn't have the creativity or the wherewithal to get resources to draw something or design something. And of course, now with generative AI, it's even worse, right? Companies are really pushing you to just use the AI instead of a designer. So we'll see how that works out. Let's see. Cami Luna says, I scan my traditional art and save a digital copy of things I sign. Interesting. Okay. And I'm going to guess you scan because you get a higher quality image than, let's say, taking a photo, which is what sometimes I do. Also, with, I guess, the scanner, you don't get that distortion that you'll get with a photo. Anyway, we'll just go to a blank picture, since I can't use download from digital camera or scan, or open from web page. So, again, you can just take a look at this. What does it tell you? We're very focused on paper. Of course, that's nothing unusual, but back then, web is still relatively new for people. And you can actually tell things about the web. So I didn't show you the full size of this. You can actually tell something about the web because look at the size of these web pages. 600 by 440. The maximum size we had was 1600 by 1200, right? And we designed PhotoDraw, if I recall correctly, to be usable really at minimum, I think by 800 by 600, but we would design our UI to fit really well within 1040 by 768. Camila says, I scan to spare the distortions and to not get the weird colorations that come through with taking a photo under most light. Yes, that's a good point. Totally forgot about that. We have labels because people were printing out labels for things, right? Back then, this was a very world filled with people printing. Now, I'm sure lots of people print today, but in 1998, 1999, that's when this app came out, by the way, in 1999. People were printing a lot, and today people are emailing more, etc. So labels are a big part of it. Again, it also shows you this was meant for like business graphics, not just for random drawing. And then backgrounds for PowerPoint slides. So notice it's a PowerPoint slide, Word landscape, Word portrait. Again, showing you that we were considered part of the Office suite. Camille says, wasn't the screen resolution back in the day 640 by 480? I think there were some people, statistically, some people had that, but I think we were largely past that age by the time I got to Microsoft. I think it was better than that. And I think 1024 by 768 was very much common. I'd have to take a look at the data, but I think we were past the 640 by 480. Okay, so we will just do a default picture. I don't know what it's going to create, by the way. Remember, I can't remember this app totally well either, so I'm having to relearn things just by using the app. Okay, so this is it, and a couple of things. I'm going to hide this this VM thing. Let's let it disappear. If I don't, there we go. So you see a normal Office menu, okay? and we'll take a look at it. And then you see something which today you would call you would call it a ribbon, office ribbon. And this was called, if I'm not mistaken, the visual tool, the visual bar, or no, visual menu. So this visual menu, these big icons here, was again hugely controversial. One of the things about being in the Office team is that there's just always this sense of be consistent, be consistent, be consistent. Don't do something just because you want to be a little different. In fact, I think one of the statements that I was told by my manager, it was philosophical in nature, not like a command. It was more like, you shouldn't do something different unless it's at least twice as better. Don't be different just for 10% or 20% better. It's got to be like meaningfully big improvement. So if I wasn't around to argue for this happened in PhotoDraw V1, this visual menu. But from my recollection, conversations with people, this was a huge argument the PhotoDraw team had with whoever was in charge of making Office look consistent. And finally, they were allowed to do this. So this was not easy to do. Okay? And let's just take a quick look at it, and then we'll go back up to the menu. So text, okay? Crop size is here. Templates. Draw and paint. Fill. Edge. Touch up. This is for photo touch ups. I think I think I may have been I'm not sure if I was the PM for touch up. So half of me wants to say yes, and half of me says, wait a second, I'm not sure about this. Effects, which was not me. Web effects, and save send. Okay, and then we'll just take a look at the menu as well, just so you're familiar. File, edit, view, insert, format tools, effects, arrange, window help. So things you'd be familiar with, but there are a few weird things here, which are probably unusual, and we'll talk about them. First is we have two opens. Can you see this? There's open and visual open. Let me show you what open does. So it's a standard, Microsoft Office open thing. And let's cancel that. Let's do visual open. So visual open was like I think this was something PhotoDraw team themselves implemented. And I think it was just supposed to have like bigger previews or something. But in retrospect, probably it solved a problem for our users. But these days, of course, I think people would just by default use the whatever was available that was standard. Batch save. I was the program manager for batch save. This was the first UI I ever did. And what it does is it lets you have a bunch of pictures on disk. It will just batch convert them and resize them. It actually was a really popular feature. Looking back on it, I would have made one improvement, which I'll talk about when I demo it to you. Scan picture, digital camera. Again, it's not going to work if I do it. Preview in browser, which we'll try. Picture setup, which is the document itself. New picture defaults, active picture. Send to mail recipient. Oh, and then did you see that? Did you see this? The menu doesn't show you all of the items, okay? And you have to click on that little chevron at the bottom to expand the menu. I forgot what this is called, but I think everyone did not like it, and eventually Office took that away. There was also a period of time when, and I don't know if we ever shipped this way when we finally shipped in any Office app, but these items would reorder depending on which one you used. But people hated that because what it meant is you couldn't develop muscle memory. Okay. Let's take a look at properties just to see. Okay, just general stuff, nothing too crazy here. Actually, let me take a look at that one time again. There's a way to disable this. I remember doing it all the time because it's very irritating because you can't tell what's in the menu. In fact, I'm going to go to Tools Options and see if I can disable it. It was the Getting Started dialog. That's what we saw at the front. general, recently used, toolbars. Oh yeah, it does have it. So this is, yeah, we did ship this way, I think. Menus show recently used commands first. People did not like this. Office abandoned it. Okay, okay. And let's just take a look here if there's anything interesting I want to say. Picture quality. Oh God, this is gonna be hard to explain. It is gonna be so hard to explain. Why is it asking here about compression level? Well, this gets interesting. Okay, I'll tell it to you later in the stream. From my memory. Let's see. Edit. Nothing interesting here. View. Oh yeah, it is called the visual menu. These big icons. Insert. Visual insert. I'd have to see what that is either. Or I'd have to see what that is also. Format. Tools. Effects. So a lot of these duplicate what's in the visual menu, but the visual menu brings up certain very key ones to you. Okay, so the next big thing that PhotoDraw, I think, innovated in at the time was this thing called the picture list. Now, it's not obvious to you, so I'm going to just draw a little bit, and in doing so, I'm going to demonstrate the draw and paint features. So I'm going to use paint. Okay, we had 2 CDs, okay? So I'm gonna see if I can ignore this. I don't want to load up I don't want to load in the second CD. So I'm drawing with the mouse. That's why it doesn't look good. PhotoDraw, in my recollection, will actually respond to like a Wacom stylus if the driver is installed. So that's why it looks bad, because I'm drawing with a pen, with a mouse. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw that, and I'm gonna create a new picture just so you see this happen. A new default picture, and now I'm gonna draw here. Oops. Oh, I need to click on drawing again. There we go. Okay, now you see I'm drawing here, but there's the picture list. So these are kind of like all the pictures, so to speak, in memory. Okay. So I don't know if I can duplicate this. I may have. I can't remember. At one point, I was the PM for something to do with the picture list, but I can't actually remember if I was the PM for the picture list right now, like in the form that you're seeing it. But you can paint, and there's something funny about how it's painting, which is not obvious. Here's the color. These are really bad colors. Back then, these were like the standard Office colors. They weren't very harmonious. Later editions of Office actually fixed this. So this was kind of an innovation to have like thumbnails of your picture. And notice that the thumbnail is live as well. Okay. Okay, so I'm also going to create a new picture. You think I can right click create a new picture, but you can't. You have to go, at least you have to do file new picture like this. So I'm discovering some of the usability issues as I use this thing. I'm going to draw something that's shapes, okay? Yeah, there's just, I don't know why we defaulted to an apple shape. Probably not the smartest idea, to be quite honest. And then when you have these shapes, and we'll see about strokes, we can change the edge, okay, to simple, okay. I don't know if you can see it, but I can make a dotted line now. Now there's something funny about this edge. Not funny bad, but just funny, like you're probably going to surprise you in just a second. So let's see if I can get there. Notice it says plane here. Okay, I'm going to click on plane. I'm going to artistic brushes, and I'm going to turn this off. There's some extra content. And so you can click on one of these, and look, it redrew it, right? So this is what we call restroking, okay? And you can retroactively change this, okay? So these were kind of like the plain ones. And of course you can change the color too. But we also have photo brushes, which are more interesting, like chains. And you can increase the size, you can retroactively change the size of these. Now, if you zoom them up a little bit, you'll notice a few artifacts. You can make rope or it looks like a pretzel. I think that's really bread. It's a baguette. I don't know what that is. That is spaghetti? Okay. I'm not buying that. Paper clips. It looks better if you don't zoom, you don't increase the width too much. So this is another form of the same restroking technology. Okay, and I'll just look through a few others to see. Oh, we had, I remember using some of these actually. This is good for Christmas things. A snake, some kind of tassel, a phone, flowers. I remember using the flowers. A fire hose? Fire hose, for whatever reason. Okay, I'm just goofing around with here, but this was actually one of the, so we're going to look at PhotoDraw and talk about some of the, how did some of these features work out, and what was the theory of what the value proposition was going to be. We didn't have telemetry back then, so we don't know how often someone restroked. Yeah, Cami Luna, this does, yeah, you're right. She says it brings back memories of MS Word border art. I wonder if we actually have, we might even have MS, no, we don't have a word art. I was thinking of word art. Were these raster based? These were all raster based. Yes, Sketchplay. These are all raster based. So let's go back to the Apple in its normal, you'd normally see it like this, right? Okay, and I just want you to think about, you had a piece of clip art, okay? And that's what you got in here. And the theory was this clip art is boring, okay? You're gonna put a piece of clip art in your PowerPoint presentation or whatever, and it's boring as hell. And you'd spice it up by restroking it, okay? So it didn't look boring. So if you wanted to, have something that was more, I don't know, like it was a flyer for a concert or something, you'd pick artistic brush and you'd have this brush stroke to make it look, no one's going to be fooled that a human drew it, but like it was some visual variety. And so this was an idea, again, not for just simple shapes, always so for, let's see if I can insert some clip art. Yeah, so let's do the actual restroke scenario. So here's an animal. I'm going to pick a simple one because I think it works better. Insert clip. Okay. So we had our own clip art collection as well, which no one has clip art anymore. So the idea was, oh, what a boring horse. Like, it doesn't fit, what I'm going to do. Let's restroke it. So you go to artistic brushes, and I don't know if it's going to affect this or not. Let me see if it can affect it. Let me try the photo brushes. It does affect it, but you can't really see it. Oh, there we go. Because you're not sure where the lines are, right? Now, here's the deal. I personally never thought, it was really interesting technology, but I don't think the scenario worked out for very well. And I'm sure some people loved it. Do not get me wrong. I'm sure some people loved it, but I don't think it lended itself to the kind of things. Clip art, I don't think it's free anymore. Yeah, we paid a lot of money for a company, I think, to license clip art and to have a team to do it. So restroking, I don't know if it's ever panned out as of like, wow, what an exciting feature. But that was the theory behind this. And you can see with this horse, it didn't always lead to sensible results, right? Like, probably if I, we'll try in a second. How about this? Let's take this. Oh, I don't have I don't have a way to bring the internet. What I was going to do is take some clip art and go ask Gemini Nano Banana to restroke it, right? I think that is what probably people would do if they want to do this today. So that's something that, really interesting tech, but yeah, I don't think it panned out. Let's see what else I can draw. Photo stamps. Yeah, I remember using this. This is just a simple, kind of an airbrush type thing, except it just drops these big things. Kind of useful for creative, like if you're doing a flyer or like some Christmas thing, but the choice of shapes was not especially, I'm not sure what these shapes look like you'd accept them today. Probably in the era, in 99, these probably looked amazing. But now, I think you'd want something. It's actually, the results fit together well, but I don't think you'd, like, look at the colors here. They're very primary, like blue, yellow, red. And I don't know if you can get other photo stamps or not, right? I don't know. There may have been, so it came with 2 CDs. I think there may have been more content on CD 2. But yeah, these are the stamps that were released on CD 1. And you can change, So again, you can get the idea. And I think in some cases it probably did work out. I remember using these for a few for some decoration of kind of flyers. But in the business world, I don't know if these really panned out the way people thought, right? One more thing I think you want to notice is, just in general, when you look at these sizes of documents, let's go to web pages. Not only tell you how big screens were, no one had 16 by 9 aspect ratio, right? What you're seeing in this default size is really what the world was like. It was, even in the overall app, this is how monitors were sized, or this is the aspect ratio. They're very squarish. Honestly, I kind of miss this, right? But there are advantages to this format and others. Okay, now I drew. Okay, now this is interesting that all my painting there went to what we would call a layer. I'm not sure what we called it in PhotoDraw. We might be able to find it out. And the horse is on its own layer. Notice I can select the thing directly. Like, I don't need to, each sprite, I'll call it sprite for right now, right? And if I paint again, I'm painting I went beyond the border, right? Let's see what happened. Let me unclick paint tools. So now I'm selecting. So this, I think for me, I think there was a logic to this. Every time you use a tool for a while, I guess it created one sprite. But we don't manage layers in this view like you typically expect out of PhotoDraw. I believe if I click this, you can see layers. I mean, we didn't call them that, but you can see how those shapes actually interact. And you can select things like let's say you have the horse behind all these things. Hard to select, right? Because you'll more often select something else. So you can use this, just click this out, select the horse directly. So that is kind of a cool feature, actually. And will the keyboard move it? Keyboard will not move it. Now, I think what's interesting, though, is you can see how visual this thing tried to be. Inspired by Photoshop, in some sense, we learned a lot. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But it wasn't trying to be a clone. And this leads me to one of the things that was always stressed to us in the team, though our position on it, to be honest, changed. We were working on a PhotoDraw V3, by the way. PhotoDraw V2 was canceled not too long after it shipped, believe it or not. Actually, maybe, I don't know, too long. Let's say within a year. And we were reorged into another division, something called NetDocs, which you've never heard of. But when you build an app like this, the first thing people will do is you'll tend to think of it as like, oh, we're competing with Photoshop. We certainly were not. We were about business graphics, okay? Number two, and this won't be obvious right now, but it was stressed by our group program manager that we are not a pixel editor. And we shouldn't think about what we did as maintaining pixel perfect, whatever, okay? And so you couldn't edit the pixels. Like you can zoom in, I guess, but you couldn't edit the pixels the way you can in Photoshop. That was not possible. And this leads me to another there's so much interesting tech in PhotoDraw. The first is zoom is, I think, relatively fast. I'm trying to shortcut. It seems slow to you because you're used to a fast computer. But PhotoDraw had this really interesting system where, if you drew something, this is so complicated to explain. So here's what you actually do. You actually do all the full pixels, right? So let's just start, you're at 100% zoom, you're drawing one pixel or a bunch of pixels on your screen. It also had a copy of that image, but I think 1/2 the resolution and 1/2 resolution of that. So it had like multiple sizes of what you drew. And the reason for that is, if I recall, I think the explanation was something like, if you zoomed out on a big picture, on a normal app, if you started painting, let me do some painting here. You might be drawing over so many big pixels, but we would actually, or the engine would like, it would render on the smaller things. So that's because that's what you were seeing when you were zoomed out. But then it would, I forgot when it would actually render on the full thing. But that's a lot of processing, right? And we had to spend twice the amount of RAM for everything you see. Now it has advantages because I think it made things faster, but it's a complicated system. And on top of it, remember, we are dealing in a world with not a lot of RAM. So what happened? Remember I told you we're storing images. If you load a photo or a PNG, we store the bitmap. And of course we're having all these like smaller bitmaps. What happened was, to save on memory, even if you loaded a PNG, or you drew something, what we stored was a JPEG version of it. And this caused no series of complaints, because if you started paying attention, you realize your things started looking fuzzier, of course, because it's being JPEG compressed, right? But we had this, or a philosophy was enforced upon us that we are not a pixel app, so you couldn't really like complain about it. Even if you, and this is the worst part. I remember I was reading we didn't have internet forums back then the way you know them, like Reddit. We had news groups. I remember somebody really, who was not a graphics person, just wrote it. He really noticed this weird fuzziness or whatever, and he wrote up this long message saying, hey, this is what happens. Here's my theory about what happens. PhotoDraw should probably do this differently because it's messing up the quality of the image. And oddly enough, now remember, I wasn't a leader in PhotoDraw. I was just a line PM. Our leadership said, disregard that message. And I was pushing for this to be absorbed into our planning. And here's the statement that was made. Remember, this guy was not a computer graphics guy. This is very important. They said, the fact that this user knows enough or can figure this, at first they said, because he knows too much about graphics, he's not our customer. We should just disregard him. Which I was like, okay, I wasn't too happy about that. But then I mentioned he doesn't know anything about graphics. He's just someone who just paid attention and was wondering. Like, he's just like that's not his job. He just was really careful in trying to examine what was happening. And they still said, well, even if a user isn't a computer graphics person, the fact that they would have noticed this means we shouldn't listen to them. They're not our customer. That drove me crazy, because a lot of things that spoil the user experience was a result of this. We're not a pixel app. Now good news if you want to think about it. In PhotoDraw V3, we, I think, had made the decision what we would not do this weird thing, and we would allow pixel editing, and we would, I think we would not JPEG compress everything. Okay. So that was one of those weird things about PhotoDraw in terms of the technology and where the industry was at and the consequences on users. So that's something I think. It was noble the way it started, but in the end, some of these technologies you have don't work out quite the way you think they're going to. Now, there's another thing related to this technology. I'm going to save this image for a second. Save as, and you notice this PhotoDraw, save as type, PhotoDraw 2000, and look, it says 2.0. It should, I don't know why it says that. It should really say V2. But anyway, I'm going to save it, and it's going to save it as a MIX file. I'm going to save it in my documents, okay? So let's go there and take a look at it. Let's go to my documents. So I think I can show details. It's hard to remember how all this worked, actually. General, sharing, no. Tools, folder options. Oh wow, that new Artist Pro 27 Gen 2 from XPen is very expensive. It's discounted to $1,700. I don't know. That's seems much. Seems much. File types. No, I want that. View. Don't hide extensions. Okay. Yeah, dot mix. I don't know if you can see it. Let me show it to you. Dot mix. So mix was the name. I forgot what it stood for. Honestly, I completely forgot. But mix was the format. So the problem with mix was this. Let's suppose you use Photoshop. You made PhotoDraw, and you created a bunch of content, and then you discover you need to do something in Photoshop now or in some other app. Now other apps don't understand this mix format. This is unique to PhotoDraw. Once you got something into, and so yes, you can export it as a PNG. Yes, you can export it as a JPEG. But you couldn't export it as a PSD. You lost your layers. And let me confirm this actually. Let's do a save as to confirm my story here. Yeah, everything. So these are all just flat formats. Okay. And if you're drawing a vector shape, and you can see these things are vector shapes, some of them. That was lost. It all became bitmaps. So you lost your layers, you lost vectors. So the format was kind of a black hole. It was like you brought stuff in, but there was nothing that can get that data out. That caused a lot of frustration with people. So at least to be honest, we should have supported Adobe Photoshop as an export option, right? Maybe we couldn't handle the vectors, but I think that was a limitation. I think eventually we would have gotten there. Assuming, the licensing issues would have not stopped us. Now there's another thing I want to show you. Let me zoom in and let's just delete all this stuff if I can. I guess I can just delete it right here. Yeah, that's cool actually. I can cut. We really should have a delete, not just a cut. And let's get rid of this. Cut. Okay. So what do I want to do? I don't have a photo, but I guess I can. Oh yeah, another theme of PhotoDraw was, actually, let me back up. You've noticed a couple of times in the stream, I have said Photoshop instead of PhotoDraw. Obviously the names are very close. Photoshop, PhotoDraw. This happened all the time to almost everybody. It happened so often that we would say Photoshop. Like in conversations, we would just ignore each other if we said it because we knew what we meant. By the way, I just want a quick check of anyone in chat. Is the background music too loud? Because I don't know how loud it is. Because this is the first time I've used this app. I don't think it's loud, but just in case. So I'm going to try to paint something. Let's go to draw and paint. I think I'll use photo stamps for this one because it'll be more obvious. Yeah, I'll use this ladybug. I don't know why this ladybug is orange instead of red, but okay. So, and I don't think there's a way to rasterize this. It just is what it is, right? Okay, so let's just, for the sake of argument, say I want to make these ladybugs more saturated or less saturated, okay? So I'm going to try that. I believe it was under effects and color effects. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. So this is correct. You can correct by painting or correct by selection. So I've selected this. So let's see. Let's do hue and saturation. Okay. So this will be hard to see sometimes, but I think I can show you something that makes it make more sense. Let's make it go all the way to red. It's probably not what you expected, number one, but that's okay. You might have expected a more just like the ladybugs would look more red. These look more saturated. Oh, sorry, I changed saturation, not color. I think it did a decent job, actually. Let me go saturated all the way to desat. So it's negative 100, which means no saturation. Now, you might not notice it, but I'll tell you right now, those ladybugs are not, what color should they be? They should be gray. They're not gray. The areas that were orange still have a little bit of orange in them. So this bothered me to no end because like it didn't do the thing that every other app did. So how to explain this? Okay. There's kind of a very straightforward way of doing color correction. These kind of color changes. The math is very simple. Let's just leave it like that. There's a standard approach to doing it, okay? And there may be more advanced ways of doing it now, but let's just say there's a standard way, right? If you want to make things more red, you increase the RGB triplet, you just increase more red or something, right? And if you want to make everything more gray, you make the R, G, and B the same values for some brightness, okay? So that's just how you think about doing that kind of change in saturation. Now, if you look, there's all sorts of color things you can do, right? You can do brightness, tint, hue, saturation, colorize, color balance, negative, grayscale. You can see if I put the grayscale, it doesn't make a difference, right? So someone realized, or someone, I forgot, had this really interesting idea. They were like, you know, we can mathematically describe. Okay, let me just back up for a second. If you have, I'm trying to make an analogy. If you have something in 3D space, like this cup, okay? You can describe the position of this cup and its orientation, I mean how much it's rotated, right? And then you can also say there's a transformation that moves it, this translates it, and rotates it some more, okay? And you can do that through a matrix, okay? That's actually the simple approach. There's even a more complicated approach called quaternions, okay? But let's just say they're both essentially matrices. Let's think about them both as matrices, okay? There's just a bunch of numbers you can do. And so this matrix can handle all rotations and movements, you know, zoom in, out. So it's kind of powerful, right? You don't need to handle translation X, Y, Z in one way, and you don't need to handle a separate way of doing rotation. There's just one thing, this matrix, which handles all translations and all rotations. It's kind of magical, okay? So that's the analogy I'm starting with. So people thought about that with color, and I guess the summary would be, well, you're starting colors like a position in color space, like I'm simplifying. It's got 3 dimensions, RGB, and you want to move it to someplace else in the color space, okay? To whatever, more saturation, less saturation, whatever. And there's all sorts of movements in the color space. Wouldn't it be great if there was a matrix that let you have one piece of code that did all of these? So you could do as many of these operations, and this matrix would just handle all of them, okay? And you didn't need to, like, if you needed to do like hue and brightness, the matrix would do them both at the same time. You didn't have to do one after the other. So it might even be more performant. So PhotoDraw actually uses that. Okay, that's called, shoot, I don't know how to show this to you. Oh no, I can show it to you because I just have to do this. Give me a second. Let me get a new Google window here. And I'm going to turn, hang on a second. I've got to do a little cleanup here. I'm going to share the stream with one of my colleagues from PhotoDraw and see if he has it. He'll probably have lots of things where he will say, hey, you messed up the explanation of this. Okay, I'm just cleaning up a few things. Hang on a second. Okay, almost ready. Okay. Here we go. So it was called Color Twist. That was the name of the algorithm. We're going to see if we can find information about this. Now, this is somebody with the username color twist. It's a nice name, so it gets used in all sorts of things. Color twist. Let's try color twist algorithm. I don't think it would come up with the name PhotoDraw. Yeah, here it is. This is it. The color twist algorithm is a matrix-based image processing technique. Hang on a second. Thanks, Charlie Martian. Thanks for joining us. Is a matrix-based image processing technique used to manipulate colors by multiplying RGB pixel values with a 3x3 or 4x3 color transformation matrix. It is commonly used only. It is commonly. Sorry, I said. It is commonly. I read it as only. It is commonly used for white balance color correction, producing cinematic looks by adjusting hue, saturation, and luminance with high precision. Let's see. So the components of the color twists. Now I don't know if this is the same exact algorithm, but the components of the matrix are color warp, saturation, lumen, and density. Let me see if I can find the. Because this is, I think, well before DaVinci evolves. So let's just, paper. Let's just guess it's in the 90s. Yeah, this is probably it. Let's check here. A novel algorithm for color constancy by D.A. Forsyth. Not sure. This doesn't look it. Let's just see if PhotoDraw shows up. I think here's what my sense of it. There was something color twist that we used. I remember there was a research paper or something like it. I think the idea has popped up in different tools. Now, whatever implementation we used, right? The problem is it had these little weird things, like it could not desaturate completely. Some people didn't notice because not everyone goes to black and white, but you can understand that since the same thing is used for hue, saturation, and grayscale, your grayscale, this one special cases it, okay? But logic tells you that hue and saturation should be able to produce the same effect. Let me undo that, right? So different algorithms are being used, apparently. This was confusing for people. I think by the time we were planning V3, the thought was we should just do it the more normal way, okay? And there was also, what else? Find something else here. Effects, touch up. Edge, that's that restroking I showed you. Fill, I'm going to show the fill. I don't think it does anything really interesting. So let's just do some shapes here. An apple, again, with the apple. And also, I always was driven crazy by the default color for lines. The default color was blue, and I just thought that was the worst color ever. Because it looks like a web link, kind of. Or the way links used to be presented on HTML pages. And the argument put back to me was, well, why was blue chosen? Because you'd expect black, right? Which is what I would have picked. They said, well, the reason blue was chosen, maybe there were others, was if you go blue and then you do a touch of effect like correct tint, like change the hue. Let me select it. Does it work or not? It doesn't work. Let me try doing this. Let me do drawing. It may not work on this specific thing here. Okay, there's some purple. Let's remove this thing. Select the purple. Test my theory out. Let's do effects. Excuse me. Excuse me. Oh God. We'll do correct tint. Yeah, okay. So I'm changing the hue. It's not a strong change. So let's try to get it. Okay. So they said, well, this will work if your starting color is blue, right? But if you draw with paint tools, but you pick up black stroke, then if you do effects and touch up, correct tint, nothing happens. So the user is going to be confused why nothing happened. I mean, something is happening, like actually, but the net effect is black just stays black. So they thought that was confusing. They didn't think, and I guess they didn't think green was a good color. I agree. I guess they didn't like red, maybe because it was like might signal that something was wrong, like red is a danger color. So that's why blue was chosen, right? Again, I probably still would have gone with black, to be honest. Okay, let's do another thing here. I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna use some artistic brushes because these are actually, okay, these actually look kind of cool, by the way. I actually did do art with these. I mean, it was kind of painful because PhotoDraw really wasn't built for like drawing like this. And each one of these little shapes took up like a big amount of memory for the time, right? Let's see. Even if it was like a vector shape, that gets, because these are, I think, these aren't rasters. They're just redrawn to look like rasters. If my memory serves correctly. Let's see now if I can do my effects. So what I want to do is make something here glow, okay? So web effects, let's glow. Let's see. Okay, do you see the glow? Actually, it's a really nice glow, honestly. I mean, I have complaints about it. So the different kinds of glow you can make. Notice how fast it was. Now they did, if you look real close, you'll see a little bit of quality problems. It's kind of quantized, blocky. But in the age this was created, no one had blur and glow like this fast, okay? And part of the reason it's fast is the way, the underlying architecture of how we use multiple, I forgot what they call it, multiple sprites at different sizes. So glows are fast. And I guess they did some smart work in approximating what a glow would do. Now, one thing you'll notice, these effects are very intense. Like, I think the modern age, I don't know if you would want the effects to be as intense with these specific colors. I think over time, software's developed more of a sense of, what's the right word? Just a little more subtlety. Let's see, is there anything else here I want to show? Web effects. Oh, yeah, okay. You saw this web effect called hyperlink. Let's see if I can do something that demonstrates it. Lots of 100s in the showing up in the chat. 100 reactions. Let's see. Let's draw a shape. Draw paint. Let's pick some shapes. Okay, apple. 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 Okay. I want to. You're probably interesting. I want an animated GIF. Sorry, not animated GIF. I want. I don't know. I'm not sure why I can't do hyperlink. I rarely use this feature. Anyway, the theory was you design a web page in PhotoDraw, right? And that's why there's hyperlink and rollover and animated GIF. And I believe there was actually an export to web. So let's see if I can find that. Save for use in, that's what it was. Yeah, on the web as a background PowerPoint in Microsoft Word or similar document. In Microsoft PowerPoint or similar slide presentation. Don't know the differences between these two PowerPoint options. In Microsoft Publisher or similar publication. Okay, let's just go to on the web. So you can do it as a picture, as a thumbnail, as a web page. It's kind of like, oh yeah, this is explain to the user, what do you want, transparency or not? We'll say yes. It's a lot of questions to save as a web page. And then it'll do this, and then let's see what it saves. It saves as a GIF here. Oh no, it saves as HTML. And let's try to see if we can find that HTML. Here we go. And I put the images in this folder. Yep, there we go. There we go. So this was, the idea was, now these apples don't look as nice as they did in the app. The idea then was we would have people saving web pages. Now, did people use it? I don't know. I don't think we had the telemetry to prove it. I'm sure somebody did. But I think today, if you made an app, you probably would not have this feature. I don't think so. You would just focus more on just drawing or painting or whatever. Let's see, anything else? This is a real trip down memory lane. I haven't seen some of these things in, oh yeah, batch save. So batch save. This is my feature, by the way. I designed this. You can save all the pictures in the picture list, or you can select them with the visual open dialog box, or all the pictures in a folder, right? And you can say, it's recursive if you want to. And you can, oh man, I really thought of a lot of things here. Like all the pictures can be in a folder, but you can bring them all up to the destination root folder or keep them. You can mirror the folder structure, and you can select which file types to convert. And let's see, in this, I'm going to do my pictures. Oh, sorry. Open. It doesn't show you the pictures. That's part of the confusion. Next. And now I'll put this in my music just to see what happens. And you can add a prefix to the file names, overwrite if needed, and the output format. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, okay. Let's do a prefix. Foo, F-O-O. And then next. And you can resize them and then finish. Okay, well, I know it works because I designed it. That was my first piece of UI. I think I just didn't pick the right folder or something. But yeah, it's nice to see that. There's only one thing I wish I'd improved with that. Is that if you go, remember you had to select so many things? If you go back and open up the wizard again, it forgot what you selected. So that was irritating because sometimes you just didn't get the thing right the first time. Like, oh, you didn't get the size right or the prefix right. So if I had had one thing I should have remembered to do, it would have been to say this wizard remembers the previous values. So you can just go next to the page where you need to tweak it, and then just keep hitting next, right? Also, I know we probably discussed, it's a wizard, so it says the name of the page you're on, but I think it's kind of a big wizard. And it is got a lot of features. And I think we designed the features very well, though I still think it feels very heavyweight. In V3, we wanted to build something called native batching. Okay, native batching means you can just essentially multi-select the picture list and right-click and export from this list, right? And that was the way we thought we would unify, because sometimes you want to like color correct a bunch of pictures. And like, how do you do that in the batch save wizard? Because you don't really have access to all the editing features in the batch save wizard. So the idea was multi-select a bunch of things here, go to effects, and let's just suppose it was enabled. Click on color correction, color correct all of them. If you want, you can look at them individually and fix them up. But then you've color corrected them all. You can do it in batch here or individually, and then just select them all, and then export from the picture list. I thought that was going to be a very powerful feature. I was really disappointed we didn't end up doing it. So yeah, I think this is a good overview of what was in PhotoDraw, a little bit of behind the scenes on what it was like using PhotoDraw, as well as what it was like to be a part of the team. I will share a little bit more about the demise of PhotoDraw. So I can't remember exactly when, but I'm pretty sure it was in 1999. When something major is going to happen to a project, in this case a reorg, you're going to be reorganized into another part of Microsoft. When something like that happens, there are signs, okay? And the sign, or maybe the project is going to be canceled. And the signs are, on Monday, people are like, oh yeah, we got to get this list of specs written, or we got to find the list of specs. Let's check, have you checked the bug system to see which bugs need to be fixed? There's a lot of people are expecting you to do things, right? There's a lot of energy in the air. And we knew there was some conversation going on with the leadership of PhotoDraw. And, these questions started getting asked less and less. No one's asking, right? And so that tells you the sign that people's focus is hey, look, we got something major going on. So let's not push people too hard for hitting what it might not be a deadline that's going to exist or is going to change. So what happened was, before this happened, there's one more reorg I wanted to tell you about. And I have a little bit of swag to show you. So I'll tell you in a second. Let me start with the swag. So let me be right back. I'm going to show it to you. 1 minute. I am back, and here's the swag. It's a jean jacket that we were all given once we shipped PhotoDraw. Or, I don't know if it was a ship gift or we were just giving it, but I love this thing. I don't even know, what's the brand? Port Authority. I feel like it was kind of expensive. It's very durable. I've had it for 26 years, so it is durable. And there's nothing on the back. It looks very plain, right? However, on the front, it says DIG. Not like Dig, the website. It's DIGG, and it stands for Digital Imaging and Graphics Group. So we were DIG. DIG, I believe, it had two products in it. PhotoDraw was one, and the other one was called not Image Composer. I can't remember. It was like a photo editing app. Okay, picture it, and then I gotta see if I can find it. Here, let me move my keyboard so it doesn't accidentally click on something. I gotta cover my face. You see that? It looks super cool, by the way. That's the Dig guy. Literally, just the Dig guy. He's holding like a lightning or torch, and it's like yellow, orange, red, and purple. Super cool. And every now and then, out of nostalgia, I put this on. Though I haven't worn it in a while, but I love this. I love this swag. Okay. So what then happens? Then we were reorged to get, not in a bad way. Microsoft acquired a company called Visio, okay, which does like diagrams. So we were put in the same team. We didn't merge as one team. We were like in the same group, okay. And I don't know what the plan was. Probably there was an idea because we were about business graphics. They also, in a sense, were about business graphics, more like the diagramming end. there was probably an idea that they might merge, okay? But we didn't know. I don't know how that discussion went, but at least at the time I was there, we were in one group, but we didn't become one team, okay? So that didn't happen. And maybe it's because things just changed too fast after that. A lot of us wanted to have the merge because the Vizio Corporation had super nice offices in downtown Seattle, like on the bay. So they're like, a lot of their offices, were beautiful. They were floor to ceiling windows, like a complete wall. And so people loved those offices. And unfortunately, they were eventually told to leave. Later, some years later, they were told to leave in that building. So they lost all that beautiful, beautiful site. So that was the first kind of reorg I just want to let you know about. So there's a bit of connection between PhotoDraw and Vizio. No technical connection, but that kind of like organizational connection. Then this event I told you about where there's something big was going on, even I sensed it. I'm not sure exactly what I knew at the time. I knew we were in conversation with another team. And it was kind of a three-way conversation. There was the PhotoDraw team, there was the office leadership, because remember, PhotoDraw is an office application. And then there was another team called NetDocs. Now, NetDocs you've never heard of. I've searched, you can't find any screenshots of it. It's important to know what NetDocs is, otherwise the story won't make any sense. So NetDocs, today, have you ever used like Google Docs or Microsoft like Office Online or whatever they call it now, where you have Word and PowerPoint, but they exist on the web? Well, NetDocs was Microsoft. I think it was the first attempt. It may have been the second attempt or whatever, but it was an attempt to do this in 1999. And I assure you, Microsoft, the technology, the web technology was nowhere near how developed it is for us to do it, okay? That didn't happen until much later. And so NetDocs was, the simple way to explain it was Office on the web. Email, all sorts of things, okay? So somehow, I don't exactly how, I don't know because I wasn't part of it, this conversation between the NetDocs and the Office team happened. And I think they wanted to acquire PhotoDraw, okay? Now, remember, they're a web application, they're a hosted web thing. That's why you can't use it anymore, because like those services are gone. You can't even demo it anymore. So they saw something in PhotoDraw or the tech or something, and I believe the reason was NetDocs had this concept called a universal canvas. Web technology, just imagine a white sheet of paper in a web page where you could do audio, video, text, presentation, and drawing things, right? That was the concept. I mean, whether you believe that's a rational idea or not, that was this idea. What's the tech you need for a universal canvas? And I think they saw in PhotoDraw at least the expertise for that, and maybe even some code for that. So legend has it that the leader of Office was like on vacation or traveling something, and in the middle of him being gone, that this conversation hit its peak between the two teams, and there was agreed to move the team over, okay? And this is legend, this could be totally wrong, but then Steven Sinofsky comes back and was like, apparently he really liked PhotoDraw, and the legend, as it was told to me, was he was kind of disappointed that this transition happened. He wanted to stay in Microsoft Office. So we went over to NetDocs, and I think the first thing it was just very clear to all of us, like there was no future in PhotoDraw. Like we were not going to further develop it. I can't remember if they explicitly said that, but it was very clear to us at the very least. So what happened was then there were a bunch of conversations, technical, otherwise, about learning about NetDocs. And I forgot the team we were literally in NetDocs. But I think they were interested in reusing some of the effects. But we were not going to have a PhotoDraw on the web. That was just not going to happen. Nothing like that. I'm not saying I'm not even saying it's a good idea to have sorry, let me back up. I'm not saying it made sense to say there's going to be a PhotoDraw on the web, okay? But I'm just trying to point out that it was very clear to us that wasn't the direction. So different things happened. Different parts of the PhotoDraw team went off to work on OneNote. I left the team. I stayed in NetDocs to work on real-time communication, telephony, among other things, and like chat and transferring data and things. So that was a hard time for, I think, a lot of us. PhotoDraw for me was, if you remember how I began the story, was something I was very passionate about, this topic of being in a space in Microsoft where I got to help people create things. So this for me was, for a lot of us, but definitely for me, we put our heart and soul into it. And so when it was no more and we were told, well, it's up, we're done with this, it was really heartbreaking. A lot of us were I'm not even sure if I was sad. I think I was really angry. I was really angry. Because I just gave, it really, one of my colleagues once said, he's a program manager as well. He said to me some years later, not a PhotoDraw PM, somebody else. We were just talking about what it's like to be a more senior program manager. He says, once you become a real PM, once your heart is broken. And I agree with that sentiment. The cancellation of PhotoDraw was a heartbreaking moment. Really, I felt it. And it made me, it changed me as a person, actually. It made me, want to be cognizant to things like, where are the winds taking your team? What are the important conversations that are happening? How do you de-risk? How do you prevent your team or your product from floating away, right? And how do you not, how do you make sure you're going to succeed? And it's not always reorg. Sometimes it's just bad reception in the public, or you were late or something. So once you make mistakes, you don't want to repeat those mistakes ever again. You get really hardened to do it. So yeah, it was a really formative experience for me. So we came and then everyone left. I don't know if there's any real code left 26 years later in Microsoft anywhere that is related to PhotoDraw. I strongly suspect it's all gone, okay? But, and this is what we should expect. Things would get rewritten. In theory, there might be like, I don't know, maybe some sort of image conversion thing or file format thing, but I doubt that. I don't think there's anything left. I will say, even though I think it's unrelated, let me show you PhotoDraw again. I was really fascinated that in the end, we saw in Office, I can bring up Office, hang on a second. I can bring it up here. Oh, I have to bring it up on another screen and move it over. Hang on. Let me minimize this. Get a blank. So some years later, Office created the ribbon. And I don't know, honestly, if this ribbon idea, I don't think it came from the PhotoDraw visual menu. There maybe have been some people who were influenced by it, but I don't recall, people saying, hey, we really liked what PhotoDraw did with the visual menu. Let's build on what they learned. I think they just independently thought this was going to improve the user experience of Office. And by the way, it was a hugely controversial change in Office, hugely controversial. But in the end, I think it worked out. I think it worked out very well. But yeah, I was very surprised to see, you can see the visual similarity to the visual menu. I was really surprised they took an approach where they allocated so much screen real estate to having commands shown like this. I do think the ribbon is better than what we have, but again, it just goes to show you that user experiences evolve, and I'd like to think there was some influence from the visual menu, even if it wasn't direct. So with that, I think I've covered the full story. Oh, I didn't. There's one last thing before I end it. Let me. What I wanted to say was, so remember we were told we're not working, right? So we just shipped V2. We weren't twiddling our thumbs. We were working on V3, PhotoDraw V3, and so we were. I guess you would say we didn't have a beta build, but we had an alpha build of it. And I actually we burned some CDs, and we even we put a little. I think we even put like a little blue version of maybe the Dig guy or somebody on it. I can't remember, but we actually did have CDs, and I know I had one. I think I've lost it since. I'll try to find it, but it did exist. It did exist, and if I was able to, I would definitely, and I was allowed to, I would definitely show it to you. But I really believe if you'd seen V3, you would have been, if you were a PhotoDraw user, you would have been like, wow. You would have really liked it. Now, with V3, how would it have held up? Assuming it wasn't canceled, sorry, let me back up. So we were working on V3 for like, I don't know, let's just say another year, and then we were like canceled, okay? So there was a lot of work on V3. There was a lot of work. Anyway, how would it have held up over the years? Would it still have been canceled? Maybe. Would it have been merged with something else? Possibly. I don't see it merging with Visio because the scenarios are very different, and the business was very different. The customers were very different. But it's kind of an interesting thing to think about what role it would have had in a modern office, right? Is there a role for a business graphics app in Office today? I'm not sure. I think today, a lot of the needs that PhotoDraw met for people, honestly, and I hate to say it, will be taken up by AI, right? Because it's much faster to just get what you want by typing something in and having the AI spit something back out than you drawing it yourself. And it's much cheaper than paying a designer to do it. So I think probably remnants of PhotoDraw might have been in like fixing up an image, removing a background, things like that. But even some of those things I think would be taken over by AI built into Office. That's my theory anyway. But it's a shame. Again, we were never trying to be Photoshop, the Microsoft version of Photoshop. But I do like to think we would have had a pretty long life as an Office application. I think there was a lot more we could have done that would have just blown people away. And I'm convinced V3 would have been something all of the PhotoDraw users would have enjoyed. And one final note, I actually, even like 10 years later, I would get people, I don't know why, but like people who use PhotoDraw would realize we had canceled it. And they were like, they had all these mix files and they were like, is there some way I can convert them? And this is the day when people wrote letters. I remember this lady from Florida wrote me a letter, not to me directly, but to the PhotoDraw team, but somehow it got routed to me. I don't know. Somehow my name got associated with the guy responsible for getting mails for PhotoDraw. And I was so touched. Second I got that email, like the day later, I printed out my response. I said, "Dear Mrs. So-and-so, thank you so much for the letter. I regret to say that it's this, and we don't have a way of doing this. Thanks so much. If there's anything I can do to help you," I gave her my personal contact information because I just thought I wanted to be really loyal to this person, right? So that was I haven't had an event like that in over 10 years, actually much longer than that. But it warms my heart to think that people cared enough. Even to this day, I'll find the occasional person that uses it, which is interesting. But it's extremely rare. It's extremely rare. With that, I think that's the stream. Thank you, everybody. It's been fun. And I will share this with maybe someone else from the PhotoDraw team, and we'll see if they can correct any mistakes that I made in sharing what I think was the history. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you all soon. And let's end the stream.